Timing system requirements for TV production. What are the requirements you need to know about as an event director or event advisor? What is necessary beyond what you do in a weekend race? So imagine you're head of timekeeping and you get a call from the president of your federation. Great news! Our World Cup race will be broadcast on national TV. What could be your first question? So I would ask, what's the budget? So my name is Henning Spjelkavik. I'm a software engineer, chair of the IOF IT Commission, and I have experience with timekeeping and TV production in orienteering and ski orienteering at World Cup and World Orienteering Championship level since 1997. And also have been a senior event advisor at the World Orienteering Championships in 2013 in Vuokatti, Finland. The topic of this presentation is also covered and regulated by the following documents, which you can find on the IOF homepage. And in particular, the major events IT quality requirements. It has a reference model showing the major components in the technical area. And today we are focusing on time taking, radio controls, punching, and TV graphics. The basic requirements are the same regardless of the level of the event. We want correct and fair timekeeping. And according to our rules, the results shall be truncated, rounded down to the nearest full second, even if you have thousands from your timing equipment. We also recommend that the quality of the timekeeping should be at 0.1 second level. Every engineer have heard about Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And we must be able to decide a winner, even if bad things happen, which means backup timing systems, video backups, and possibly even manual backup and contingency plans. So how to do timekeeping? Well, at start, there are not that many special requirements, besides that the runner, the athlete, must start at the right time. We do recommend start gates in finals with interval start, but it's not a requirement by the rules. Why do we recommend that? It gives better documentation of the actual start time in case there are any conflicts or complaints afterwards. And it's also familiar for the TV audience from alpine and cross-country skiing. At the finish line, there are really two possibilities, and we often use both of them together. One is a photocell, a very classic solution where there is a light beam, or actually two light beams, which the runner or the athlete has to cross, triggering the finish time. The other solution is to have an active transponder on the racer with antenna loops talking to the transponder. This transponder system may be integrated with the punching system in the SIAC or EMI-tag, but it could also be a separate system in addition to the punching. For the timekeeping, we need two independent systems. And we need backup and documentation of what happened. This includes video backup and possibly a manual backup as well. So what's different then when we are doing a broadcast? First, we must remember the first rule of TV. It must look good on TV. But okay, what does that mean? The corollary is that if it doesn't look right within 5 seconds, it doesn't really matter. It might not have happened, a TV producer told me once. And this means that we should be able to correct problems within 5 seconds, or preferably before they happen, which means that we need more people in the timekeeping team to verify that the results are right and immediately correct any problems. So in the old days, we might have had 5 minutes to fix a problem, But if we want it on TV, we must fix it immediately. Another very important point is that the clock must visibly stop when the runner or athlete crosses the finish line. TV people, commentators, spectators get really confused and send us lots of messages when the clock does not stop. It continues after the athlete has finished. And we have also found that at intermediate times, typically in the forest, it's better that the clock stops a little bit early than too late, because the camera coverage usually stops at the control. We might follow the runner into the control, but typically the camera stops there. So if the clock doesn't stop immediately, the runner will be out of the picture before we can show the time, and that just looks weird. And the producer will just not show it. He will cut to something else. But how can it actually stop a bit early? Well, I've seen in some kinds of links, it can add so much latency, and that if you have a cable-based intermediate time, it's actually faster than the TV picture. It could also be that you use a transponder separate from the punching system. And we have also decided within the IOF 15 years ago that athletes should not stop on the finish line when you're on TV. They should be able to run, ski, or cycle across the finish line. I have already mentioned Murphy's Law, or outages. We need to know what to do. Hence, contingency plans are needed. When the competition is ongoing, time cannot be stopped, and there is no second chance to start over. So failure scenarios must be tested and rehearsed in advance. How do we do failover? When should we do it? And if we have several systems, and we must have several systems in these kind of events, the results calculated by the system B must be identical to those calculated by system A when both systems are healthy. The TV producer is a very important stakeholder when we do a TV production. And he or she needs reliable pre-warnings. Because sitting in a dark bus with only screens, live results, maybe GPS tracking, you are completely blind to what's happening outside of your sensors. But a good GPS coverage can be used for the planning for the TV producer and the person doing the prioritization. But this requires that we have actually tracking coverage in the designated parts of the course, which again needs proper internet connectivity in that area. To go into some technical details about radio controls, this is a quote from our requirements documentation. We have found that for TV pre-warnings, it could be delayed up to 5 seconds. Of course, it's not ideal, but it might be acceptable, which means that you could send these time splits over a mobile network, 2G, 4G, which in some cases might simplify the logistics a lot. However, when the runner is in the picture and we need to stop the clock, we typically need less than 1 second latency, and preferably a few hundred milliseconds, which means that a dedicated radio or system, possibly with mesh as being used in many countries in continental Europe, or a cable is necessary. So we can transmit this punching time or trigger it by actually connecting it to the punching system or a dedicated timing system. But it could also be triggered manually. Because if we remember the first principle of TV, it must look good. And if it isn't right within 5 seconds, it didn't happen. So actually hitting a button, triggering the time manually, and being maybe 2 seconds off the perfect or the actually correct time in the forest, it's perfectly okay. Of course, it's not okay at the finish line. So being 2 seconds off in the forest is better than no timing graphics. With regards to punching, you might say there isn't much of a difference. Of course, we must use an approved system. And it must look good and professional on TV. We now recommend to use 2 cards or tags for the athletes. And it has a dual reasoning. One is to protect against card failure. So if one card is out of battery or is destroyed in a crash or something, we have 2, so we have redundancy. The other reason is to reduce the risk of discussions, as in, I'm sure I saw the blink or heard the confirmation. It's less likely that 2 cards are doing this wrongly. So if that happens, it is most probable that the athlete remembers wrongly. We should also have in mind how we place the controls, in especially at the finish or at the last control or arena passages. Because if the athlete has to do a U-turn at the control, it's quite a risk that we have a punching too quickly scenario. And of course, it's always the athlete's responsibility to get a proper punch and wait for the confirmation signal. But it will be a very awkward situation when everyone can see that the racer has punched the control, but the athlete is disqualified. So we can mitigate that by considering how will the runner pass through this control in order to avoid these kind of missed punches. The TV production crew will have its own communication system, for instance, to tell this running cameraman what to do. And as timekeepers, you do not want to be on the same line as the producer instructing the camera people. However, a way of doing real-time communication between the timekeeper, media coordinator, producer, and SCA has proven really useful. So we recommend establishing a way of communication during the race. It could be by radio. We used a WhatsApp group in 2019, and that worked very well. And why do we need it? In particular cases of did not start, disqualified, did not finish, or other important changes or issues showing up, it is important to tell the media coordinator, who can tell the press people, speaker, and the producer things that are important, or also possibly the graphics. In order for this to look good, we should have a procedure and get changes done quickly and correctly when there is something. For instance, a runner has a wrong tag on the start, and if we don't fix that, we won't get intermediate times. Or a did not start. It's important to communicate it to commentators and the TV production crew so that they are not waiting for a runner that has not started or retired. This is also information important to tell the story to the spectators and the viewers. Unfortunately, we might have some disqualifications or other issues with a racer. And it is very important to establish the procedures and be able to make a decision. It means that you must decide who can make a decision. And be ready to also handle complaints and protests. Personally, I prefer to not show disqualifications immediately on TV, so we wait until it's confirmed. As an example, if the runner has 2 cards and the first one is incomplete, We do not transfer the disqualification immediately to the TV graphics. We wait until we have both of them, maybe also do a check with the runner what can have happened, and then we transfer that manually to the timing graphics and also inform the commentators and so on through the communication procedure which we have already established. Also, if there are any protests or any change decisions, it's very important to communicate that. Finally, who should do the timekeeping? I want you to really consider the risks of using a team without experience at this level. So I would prefer to hire a team or a vendor with good references. That means they have done this before and can do it again. It's also an additional benefit if they have worked with the same TV producer before. But even if they are very experienced, you need to agree on who does what and how you collaborate and so on. On the other hand, if we only allow experienced teams, how can we develop? And it is by bringing new people into the mix, into the team. If you are in a situation where you can't afford to hire or there isn't any available, at the minimum, try to find a person experienced with timekeeping for TV and add he or she to your team, so you are not starting from scratch. So, to sum up, timekeeping for broadcast TV going live, it has higher stakes. More people, more experience is needed to do that right. And you have less time to fix problems. And it adds a huge lot of more stakeholders to your project, which means more coordination and more things that can go wrong. So, thank you for listening. My name is Henning Spjelkavik, and you can reach me on email. And now I'm ready to answer if you have any questions.